yell, but you're very echoey.
I'm sitting on this couch like a dang Neanderthal. You can sit in between us if
Sit
you need
in between us on the couch.
Right. Looking like I got scoliosis right now.
I'm gonna do this number. This number right here. How's that sound?
There you go.
Okay.
That sounds better.
We look like a Christian rock group album cover.
Do we?
Yes.
You were so confident in that. Yes.
Hi, Fendi.
I don't know if I like
think
it.
Fendi wants to be in the Christian rock group.
I might have to make you go upstairs so you don't interrupt.
No!
The dog is part of the podcast.
Don't send me upstairs.
Come on.
It went so cheerful to suddenly, come on. She responded to it. And roll intro.
Yes, editing Jordan cut right here.
But yeah, and we should probably mention something about being like, yeah, pilot episode, you know, just to get it out there.
I think that's what you just did.
This is a pilot episode for all you audio listeners out there. Love you to death.
We don't have video watchers.
All you listeners out there, love you to death. Pilot episode for a podcast that we're experimenting with because why not?
Because our sitcom failed.
Yeah, we had a sitcom that we were gonna do, but that didn't work out.
No, it did not.
So, now we're just being our real selves and not pretending to be someone we aren't.
Yeah, sitcom turned into a satcom. Didn't work.
So,
Although, to be fair, pretending that we're not ourselves is most of what we do
we
with
should
our
probably,
free
we should
time.
probably at least introduce ourselves.
Should we?
Yeah, probably not last name, just first name.
No. I'll go by my first name.
Or the last name if you want to do that, because that's pretty much what yours is.
Yeah. My name is Pertuset. Good luck trying to spell it, and don't even try looking it up.
Hi, I'm Levi,
I'm Jordan.
and this is
Nat
the Nat One
One.
Podcast. It's
AKA
called Nat One because we play Dungeons and Dragons a lot.
All of our free time.
All of our free time.
That's
And-
true.
And if we're not playing Dungeons and Dragons, we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, we do that a lot. And speaking of talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the first thing I wanted to broach today was that thing I mentioned before we started, which is two things. First, question, because I never thought about this, and I just wanted to ask it. I just wanted to broach it. What is your favorite damage type in Dungeons and Dragons, and why? It doesn't have to be like anything actually mechanical. It can just be like, I like it because I think it's cool, or it can be mechanical. It can be because you think it's got a good in-game, gamey reason. But I was just thinking about that, and I was like, there's a lot of damage types.
See, I know
not a
what
lot of them
Terran's
get
is. I don't know what mine is.
Terran's is probably force.
Terran's is force.
Terran does like force.
Terran likes force damage.
No, mine is definitely acid. It's not used enough, but it's just so cool. The idea that there's the special acid type that's just, it just melts you. Like you got the meta magic adept feat, which I don't think that acid is included in the meta magic. I forget what it's called. The one that changes the damage type.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could make Meteor Swarm into Acid Swarm, there's just something really menacing about that one.
I love that. I don't know. I like psychic because of the meme potential. Because there's always jokes about things making you take psychic damage.
You smell bad. Oh!
4 points of psychic damage.
See, I thought of this question, and I didn't even think of my own answer to the question. Because I thought about it when I was like, man, what even is force damage, right? Because I was outside walking my dog, and I was like, what even is force damage, right? Because it's described as, like, pure magic. That's what force damage technically is. Because when I hear the word force, I think of, like, something shoving you.
Punching.
That's what I think. Like, I think of, like, bludgeoning, but bludgeoning already exists.
Mm.
Yeah.
But actually, if you think about it, force could be, like, a laser beam. Because it's just magic. Force is, like, pure magical energy without elements attached to it, supposedly. Which is kind of cool. I'm pretty sure Terran likes it because a lot of things don't have resistance to it.
Yeah.
And he likes playing Warlock a lot and Eldritch Blast.
He likes that nothing has immunities to force damage.
And then it was funny when I threw the homebrew enemy at him that had resistance
Yeah,
to force
it was.
damage. But yeah, no, I don't know. Because at first I was like, oh, I think fire damage is my favorite. Because I'm, the tried and true, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But fire is also, like, I think the most resisted damage type in all of D&D ever.
By monsters, yes, and by features, probably also yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, because, frickin' tieflings.
Tieflings.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. Because I agree with the point Jordan made. I think Psychic's really funny. Which is also, I had a conversation with you about this Pertuset, which is I hope you guys never fight an Emerald Dragon ever. Because their breath weapon attack is psychic somehow.
We're screwed.
And I don't know how to describe that. Because it's just like, yeah, it breathes and you get a migraine and have a conniption.
Well, and also, I'm pretty sure that if we were to fight an Emerald Dragon with that party, none of us have very high wisdom.
No, which I'm very excited for.
So if it's a wisdom saving throw, we're screwed.
Yeah, none of you have like really high wisdom or constitution. So I'm really excited because those are two big saving throws. Besides Dex, you guys will probably be covered on.
Hell yeah.
But the other two really big saving throws, Con and Wisdom, no. So that'll be fun to see you guys deal with that stuff.
Well, don't get ahead of yourself. Tonight, you have to deal with pretty much solely
Stop.
psychic damage.
We're gonna die.
Don't remind me.
You're level 10 now, so you probably won't get frightened because of you. But you're still gonna get hurt by psychic. You will have those conniptions if I have anything to say about it.
For context, we've started a horror campaign, a horror adventure in the campaign that we're playing currently, and Levi's been psyching out about it all week.
I hate it. I hate it. It's based off of
Uzumaki.
Yeah.
Japanese manga by Junji Ito, and I hate that type of horror because it's the only horror that actually freaks me out.
Yep. For all you sweet listeners and maybe watchers out there,
love you to death.
We don't have video.
They might be using scrying. I don't know what they can do.
They might be watching from outside right now. You don't know.
They're inside the house.
They're in the walls.
I'm an avid horror fan. I'm DMing the current campaign, which is just a Greek mythology-based campaign, but
it's not Theros.
It's not Theros.
It's not Theros. I came up with it before Theros came out, like probably a month before.
Wizards of the Coast, give us our money.
Right? But you DMs, and sometimes you players, you know how it be. I'm making Greek campaign. I'm like, this is cool. A month or two goes by, and I read a horror manga by a weird guy that likes cats. And I'm like, I'm putting this in Greek now. And so now I have Junji Ito's Uzumaki, Gyo, and his Tomie collection all sprinkled within my campaign somewhere. And they get to deal with it.
Yeah. So fun.
So fun and good.
So fun and good and tasty.
He's already successfully scared us once in this campaign by having a bedtime story kill one of our players.
That's true.
Once,
R.I.P.
I've been
Taryn.
scared more than once. When you did that, okay, when you messaged, what's her name?
Mag, yeah.
Magnesia, and you did that weird...
The whisper. Yeah.
voice. That,
Yeah, that was terrifying.
No, don't like it.
Don't do it
But
again.
anyway, so we got to this from my first topic, but second thing, which is also a D&D thing, was I actually thought about this like moments before you guys got here, which was the concept of like, there's definitely in core D&D not enough vulnerabilities.
No.
Barely any enemies have vulnerability to anything. I think the one that like always has vulnerability is skeletons of any kind. Always have vulnerability to bludgeoning damage, which makes sense. Because they're just bones. But, like, more things should have vulnerability to stuff. Because there's also the chance that, like, the party's probably not going to have whatever damage type they're vulnerable to. And if they do, it's a happy coincidence. And then they can be like, yeah, we're awesome because we have the damage they're vulnerable to. So it's like a nice little thing to make the players feel good about themselves. So I was thinking, what if you based vulnerability off of scores that creatures had? Because this also probably wouldn't make it so that a ton of vulnerabilities got added, but like, what if a creature had like below 10 intelligence? It's automatically vulnerable to psychic damage.
Ooh,
Well,
I like that.
I wonder. It seems like Wizards, as a whole, have completely underused the system of immunities, vulnerabilities, and resistances.
And fears.
Yes, because very few enemies, very few monsters at all have resistances and immunities. Oh, they have a lot of them have immunities to the non-magical something.
Yeah,
Or
they
resistance.
Can't be frightened, can't be knocked prone, stuff like that.
Necrotic resistances.
There's a lot of like undeads that got necrotic resistance, but then some of them have radiant vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
But by far, I don't know if there's even a single creature that's got acid vulnerability. But I know there's a couple that got acid resistance, and there's a lot that got poison resistance or immunity.
Clay
like
golems
plants.
heal if you hit them with acid damage.
Yeah. There's far and wide, there's almost no vulnerabilities, but there's also very little use for all the damage types in general. For example, player types, the only ones that can ever really mess with damage types are spellcasters.
Yeah.
And even then, the only way they can mess with them is by choosing a spell that has a different damage type or having metamagic and changing between 5.
Or Chromatic Orb, which has like,
which
I don't remember how many damage types, but you can pick between like 8 or something damage types with Chromatic Orb.
Or Chaos Bolt, which got the random 8 different ones that you don't choose. But as a whole, that's very limited options for damage type building for you to choose from. And it's got no real impact in the game hardly ever either, because you can choose any damage type, and guess what? All that does for you is you get a cool different way to describe what it does, but it rarely ever has any gameplay impact. And I'm not sure if that's because Wizards are trying to get rid of that and they don't care about that stuff, or not.
We'll see in 5.5.
Yeah, coming soon.
5.5 coming soon. You know, 5e's great, but it's really simple, and it's made for people getting into D&D for the first time. And we've had this conversation countless times, but this is for the listeners, love you to death. That once you understand how to play D&D, you're like, oh, I understand now why people love 3.5e so much, because now that I know how to play the game, it's like, whoa, 3.5e is really in depth, but not so much that it's like Pathfinder. It's still understandable, and that for context, we play 5th edition, but we play like with a lot of homebrew rules.
Modified 5th edition.
We play with a lot of homebrew rules, and a bunch of them are pretty much we just replace 5th edition rules with 3.5e rules, or we mix the two sets of rules together, because we use D&D Beyond. Not sponsored, but we do use D&D Beyond, so we kind of like have to play in mostly 5e rules because all the character sheets on those are made in 5e, but we can still use homebrew rules. But yeah, like vulnerability and resistance in 3.5e, I think is so much cooler than in 5e, and it's because 5e is much more simple, and it's just, you half damage, you double damage. But in 3.5e, it's you have a certain threshold that you're resistant to, and once that you take that much less damage when you're resistant to it. I actually don't know how vulnerability works in 3.5e now that I think about it. It might be the same where you just double damage. I'm not sure, but I know that's how resistance worked in 3.5e, and I do think it's a cooler way of doing it because you're resistant to a certain amount of damage before. It's the same thing in 5e as a damage threshold, where someone has to do so much damage to you to actually hurt you.
That's like the monk ability.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to the main topic at hand, I thought it would just be interesting to like have something with low intelligence make it automatically vulnerable to psychic damage. Something that like has low strength make it vulnerable to like, I don't know, bludgeoning damage. I think that would make sense if they're vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. Low con, you could fucking you could have like you could have like a table, and when the enemy is made or something, or like when you decide as a DMO, I'm going to use this enemy, you roll on the table and it determines, which not many things have less than 10 con, but if it did, it could be like anything that's physical damage. It could be like they're vulnerable to slashing, they're vulnerable to piercing, they're vulnerable to bludgeoning, they're vulnerable to all three.
Listen to this guy, he doesn't even think about poison. The one thing that should affect your con.
Definitely poison. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know about
again,
your
this is a symptom of these damage types never get like used for anything, so you never think of them when you're thinking of stuff like this.
Well, the problem with that is building off the abilities is there's 6 abilities and there's way more than 6 damage types.
Yeah.
Which means you're going to have to add tables or you're going to have to just, again, omit some damage types. And there's some DMs that are newer or some more experienced ones that are like, I don't care. I don't care about making special ones based off your ability score. That's why I just do it the way I do it, where I'm like, I want to make a homebrew enemy, because in my campaign, all the enemies I make are all homebrew. I'm like, I'll look at it and I'll be reasonable and I'll be like, I add every single enemy has 1 vulnerability at least. And I always, just because to reward the players, if they come up with if they can figure it out by context, they can do more damage to it. But the way I figure it out is like, okay, what the heck is this thing? Is it a blob of gelatinous goo? Is it some kind of giant chimera? What is it? And
Hecatoncheires.
Is it a hecatoncheires? And then I go, okay, what would this thing reasonably possibly be the most vulnerable to out of all the damage types? If it's like a beast that's got lame, dumb intelligence, I might make it psychic.
Did we set a timer?
No, we didn't.
No. However, if it's like a bug, like whenever Taryn and TJ took on the Rat King quest, I will make it probably fire or cold, because, bugs are stupid and weak and they can't survive fire or cold, except for the ones that are incredibly strong and resilient, which totally can.
Like 30 minutes now?
We're at 16.
16?
We'll cut it here in a minute.
Okay.
Yep. No, we're good. We've got a minute before we get a break.
We talked for 16 minutes.
We've got a minute before we get a break.
That's just for how much we have left on the end.
But yes, I always just add 1 random vulnerability based on the creature type, more or less, and then I change it around. Like, even if it's a humanoid, if I know there's a humanoid that mostly casts ice spells, cold spells, might make them vulnerable to fire, or might make, if they're a humanoid that I know is plagued, as me as a DM knows is like, has something controlling them, mind controlling them, or has something wrong with them, I might give them psychic vulnerability, or conversely, if they're a creature that's got a strong conviction that makes them resilient and resolute in what they're going to do, I might give them psychic or resistance or immunity even. That's all it comes down to, is just me as a DM. But also, you got a bunch of DMs that don't want to make homebrew enemies. But it shouldn't be just as hard for them to slap that same logic onto any monster they make. If they decide there's not enough vulnerabilities, resistances, they might just be like, man, this ancient red dragon they're about to fight, I want it to have a vulnerability. They breathe fire. They're red, they're fiery, I'm going to make them vulnerable to cold. Or I'm going to make them vulnerable to acid, because I think acid is the opposite of fire. I don't know who would think that. But the point is, I don't think that.
It's the logical conclusion.
Man, I thought it was forced.
Wet. That's about it.
But I think part of the reason why we have such an easy time integrating homebrew stuff is because we started not playing with rules, so technically everything we did was homebrew.
Yeah.
Back when we first started playing. So now it's just kind of like, yeah, we can add that into the game, because, it's better than playing with absolutely no rules.
Yeah. But going back to the first topic, I'm not saying that, like, this is the system every enemy should run off of. I'm just saying this is a thing that could be like, yes, this is a little thing I could add on the side if, like, an enemy's really stupid. If an enemy has, like, an intelligence of 8, I'm going to make them vulnerable. It's like something that can give a little bit more logic behind they should definitely have a vulnerability if they don't already. But yeah, definitely, I think you just got to add more vulnerabilities. Because, like, there's I don't know. Most skeletons, vulnerable to bludgeoning. Should be. They're skeletons. But undead, there's a lot of undead that just aren't vulnerable to radiant damage.
Well, in 3.5, they're vulnerable to healing magic.
Yeah.
That too. And, like, I don't get it. Why is that not a thing? Because they're undead. They're unholy. They should be vulnerable to the celestial damage type, the holy damage type.
That is the maddest I've ever seen my dad get over the changes from 3.5 to 5, because my dad is an old school D&D player. He got so mad when we told him that undead can no longer be harmed by healing magic, and it says in the spell now that it has no effect on undead and constructs, and he's like, well, that's stupid, because you used to be able to fight undead with healing magic.
And I don't actually know the reason why Wizards changed that. If
know.
anyone watching this does know, please let us know, because I would like to know why.
I'll tell you the number one answer. They changed ownership. Wizards is now Wizards Magic the Gathering certified.
But yeah, stuff like that. Like, undead should still be vulnerable to Radiant, definitely.
Absolutely.
Other enemy... I mean, I think all of the elemental enemies, like, they should all have some other elemental type that they're, like, weak to, because then it makes, like, a balance of power between all the elements, right? So, I mean, fire elementals should be vulnerable to... Well, actually, I don't know, because, like, there's no equivalent of water damage in D&D.
The only one they use is cold or bludgeoning.
There is cold, but when I think about cold, I think, like, I don't think fire is vulnerable to cold. I think fire is vulnerable to water. I feel like fire melts ice, and so ice should be vulnerable to fire. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, at that point, make your own elements, right?
Mm-hmm.
True.
Like, make ice a damage type, make ice a vulnerability, and all that stuff. But it requires more homebrew or wizards to come out with something, but I have no idea what direction they're going in as far as vulnerabilities. Obviously, they took a different step with 5e as regard to all that, and as more books have come out, it doesn't seem as though they've been trying to incorporate it more or do anything more with it. So I don't know if they're trying to abandon it, or if they think it's good where it is, or if they're trying to improve on it, but they're dumb and haven't figured out how. I don't know. I guess we'll find out in 5.5e if they even care at all. So we looked up the vulnerabilities of 3.5e.
We did.
I think we found the right one.
Maybe.
It might not be the correct one, but as assumed, how it works is you actually take 1.5 times damage in 3.5e instead of 2 times damage like in 5e, which we were just talking about. Actually, we think it works a little bit better. Because, as Pertuset was saying, you don't just melt something if it's vulnerable to it.
Yeah.
Although that would be kind of sick.
Right? I mean, we go back to that ancient red dragon idea. You got like 3 or 4 casters that got ice damage.
I want to melt a dragon. Oh my god.
You'd anti-melt. I guess you'd freeze is what most laymen would call it.
Freeze, as we say in the industry.
And as you know, when you burn something, you anti-freeze.
Yeah. No, antifreeze is a different thing that you should not drink.
Are we back to acid damage, or would that be poison?
Febreze antifreeze.
Oh no, we don't talk about Febreze antifreeze.
I don't even remember. Was that a character?
That was Taryn's
Taryn.
character.
I couldn't even remember what it was. I just remembered the words.
We've mentioned the name Taryn a couple times. Taryn is my little brother who is a part of our D&D group. He will probably be joining us on here at some point. He is known for doing completely off the wall wacko stuff with D&D. And his very first character was named Febreze Antifreeze and was a feral 12-year-old. Which is Taryn.
Yep.
That's just Taryn.
Yes, first self-insert, as you do with most of your first characters.
We could just name off all the ways Taryn's characters have died.
We would be here all day. That would be its own episode.
Maybe we should wait until Taryn's on.
Taryn's vulnerability, dying.
The Taryn special.
Taryn's vulnerability, having a character.
We love Taryn very much. We joke because
Yes.
he's the youngest out of the group, but he does have a horrible, horrible luck when it comes to keeping characters alive.
That's what he gets.
D&D just hates him.
It does.
We used to all think that, like, he did it for funnies on purpose a long time ago. We
doesn't.
thought that he did it on purpose for funnies. But then, like, as the years went on and we kept playing D&D, and it's been like, what, 3 years
It's been
now?
3
Yeah.
or 4 years.
And it just keeps happening.
And he gets so upset because he puts so much time into these characters, and it's insane. This boy now makes like 4 or 5 backup characters for each character that he makes.
Oh, it's pretty funny to watch. I don't know if he has one for the campaign we're playing right now.
Yeah, he does.
better get... Okay, I was going to say, he better get one ready.
He didn't, and then I think very recently
I think he
was
did.
like, I'm going to make a backup character, because something happened where...
Oh, because he kept almost dying when he was doing the Rat King quest.
Oh yeah.
Actually, he kept going down. He pretty much died.
He did pretty much die.
If TJ wasn't there. But yeah, back to the vulnerabilities. I really wonder what, like, here's my biggest qualm with vulnerabilities and resistances, perhaps, is, and this is a problem that plagues all of 5th edition, The dang marshals don't get no love, huh? Like, you got the wizard over there. It's like, oh, this enemy, they seem to be crackling with electricity, so I'll know not to cast an electric spell on them. Maybe I could use something else.
Unless they're Simonius.
Well, that's true. Unless
who
they're
casts fire at devils.
Yeah.
Yes.
And expects it to hurt them.
But marshals are like, I got this sword. It's magical slashing. And maybe if they're lucky, you get into a campaign where it also has an additional damage type on it. But that's also kind of unlucky because you fight that electrical cracking enemy and you have a lightning sword that
It does 4 damage.
it's good. Poor guy, you know. I don't even know how you would remedy that in an organic way for marshals to be able to play with vulnerabilities and resistances the same way that casters can.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like, you need a support caster.
Mm.
And then there's the case that you need better support spells. Because D&D, it has good utility support spells, I think, but it doesn't have any good, like, I'm gonna cast a thing and it's gonna make you do this damage.
You
like,
got haste.
It doesn't have something where a sorcerer, per se, could be like, it has elemental weapon, but elemental weapon's pretty doo-doo, because it's, what, a D4?
It takes a whole action to cast it, which, obviously, you know, there's a lot of combats that finish by 4 or 5 rounds. So a whole action just to change the damage type and get a little more damage on a weapon. As we saw with Dylan's character in Olympus, he kept trying to use elemental weapons so that way he could, you know, do something with it. But he even lamented. It takes a whole action. That's a whole turn down for him.
The fight was over by the time it worked.
So,
yeah.
there needs to be better support spells that are either like they cost bonus actions to cast, so that, and also that, I mean, that's a qualm we've talked about many times. Is action economy is just pretty horrible.
Oh yeah.
In 5th edition as well. We had a whole spur where we were like, you know what, we're gonna switch to Pathfinder because its action economy is better. And then we were like, oh, we can't do that because our character sheets are all in 5th edition.
See, I think that's where marshals have casters beat, because it was always so frustrating playing the cleric where I was like, yeah, I have like one thing that I can do for my bonus action, but once I cast it, that's it. But like rogues get all of those options and different attacks, and like fighters get 2 attacks and stuff like that. And so if you're
Fighters eventually get 4 attacks.
Fighters eventually get 4 attacks. So if you're like certain caster classes, it's just kind of like, yeah, no, I shoot it. I do it. Oh, it doesn't hit. I'm done.
No, can you imagine a feature? This is like busted. But can you imagine? So like the huge benefit with the marshals having the multi-attack, of course, is if they hit, or you can either hit twice, or if you miss, you have a chance to hit again. I really felt that when I played my rogue, having 1 attack action. It's like, oh, I miss? All right, I'm doing no damage this turn then. But can you imagine like a wizard subclass or any caster subclass that lets them cast twice as part of an action, like multicast instead of multi-attack?
Love that. Oh my gosh.
I mean, you'd be burning through your spell slots quicker.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a high chance, of course. What? Okay. Idea time. Let us know how bad it is. Multicast, but only for the same spell. You don't get to cast it twice, but if you miss on the first cast, you can cast again to try and do it.
So it's like advantage.
Yeah, that way you're not out damaging. Because if you cast 2 spells in 1 turn, that's really high damage.
Yeah, I mean, if you get a good inflict wounds in there, combat's over.
Then it would have to be one of those things though, where it's like you got to set it up so it's like you can only do this when it's a spell that deals damage, and you have to like roll to hit with it. Stuff like that, you would have to, which I'm not saying that that's a bad thing at all, but like that would have to be the rule that's set up for it, is like it has to be a roll to hit spell and it has to deal damage.
Give it the twin spell rules.
Yeah, give it the twin spell rule. That's a good.
Although I feel like that might work better for like a feat, maybe.
That could be a feat.
Multicaster.
It'd be like Sentinel Pam. Everyone plays variant human and takes it first level.
All variant human team, all marshals are Pam Sentinels, and all casters are multicaster wizards and sorcerers.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, have fun with no clerics and druids.
I love the idea of this multicast with the twin spell rule exactly, because if it heals, that means if you miss your heal, you can cast it again.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know how you do that.
When we used to roll for healing spells, that's how that would work.
Oh. That was a good time.
Stupid.
That one one time that I gave Aaron's character a concussion because I rolled a Nat 1 to heal him in campaign 1. Deserved. But yeah, that's why we read the rule book.
Should have never sent you all to a stealth dungeon. Worst mistake of my life.
Yes, it was.
No, I gotta admit though, I'm not incredibly well versed in 3.5e rules. 5e, I feel like we got that pretty down pat.
We're pretty good at it now.
Admittedly, there's a decent chunk of rules that we just don't play with, like encumbrance or
coin weight.
Because it makes the game less fun.
Well, you know, some people really like those gritty realism games. Because I'm sure there's some people watching that are like, they're making fun of the way I play.
We
We're
are.
not-
We hate you.
No, we're not making fun. We just don't play that way.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we might talk about, we might complain about, that other people are like, I have the exact opposite experience. Because they play with different rules. We play with different rules.
That's the thing, too. We're a very, most of us are RP heavy.
Mhm.
We like acting and being a character, except Taryn.
We're all theater kids, so
Except
Which
TJ.
is, it's weird that Taryn. It's weird that it's Taryn and not TJ,
that's true.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Taryn was a theater, is still
a theater kid.
but he just plays Taryn.
But he has fun.
He has
Yeah.
fun.
He has fun.
He plays Taryn with a cool concept.
Yeah.
That's always his characters.
Yeah.
is
Taryn with
but
time travel.
Taryn is his personality, but then he can do cool things because he's a D&D character.
Mhm.
Taryn, but he moves fast.
That's what he is right now. Yeah. But then like TJ.
His kobold voice.
Don't get me started on TJ. Never should have gave TJ a love interest at the beginning of the campaign. Worst decision of my life.
I think that was the best decision of your life.
I never should have given TJ anything. Worst.
We love you, TJ.
We love TJ.
Our good friend TJ, he's got an interesting idea, which I'm sure he's not the only one that does this, but he's the only one in our group that does this. He will straight up watch something, play something, has a cool character in it, rips it, takes it to D&D. Now, that takes a decent amount of skill to be able to try and translate the abilities they have in some complete other fictional thing and translate them into D&D.
He's gotten good at it.
But he always also RPs them exactly the same way. That can be great, that can be horrible. Except for in the case, if any of you have ever watched the anime Black Clover, he tried to rip the character Finral and made him into a bard. But over the course of that campaign, he was no longer at all like that character, like at all. He became this grizzled, anti-religion freak that ran the planet.
I think it's cool, right? Because it's like, oh, you start with this concept and then they become something totally different
I
to
loved
what they
his
are. In the
character
show. It becomes your own
development,
thing. It becomes your own thing.
That's just for TJ. The rest of us all, I'm pretty sure, make as original as they can get characters.
I rip names sometimes, but most of the time the concepts are original.
Yeah.
Although I will say it makes character art drawing a lot easier because then I can just like Google pictures of what TJ's character looks like and then D&Dify it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was we've played. Okay, campaign 1 doesn't count as a campaign, does it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Oh, we played it.
We played it. We played it all the way through. We finished it.
We've played 2 D&D campaigns to completion. And
Are you not counting sci-fi?
No. We've played 2 D&D campaigns to completion. We're playing one right now, and we've got a 4th one that is planned.
Yep.
I've DM'd the 2 that we've completed. Pertuset's DMing the one that we're playing right now, and I'm going to DM the one that's planned, which is probably not going to be for a long time.
I am perpetual player.
And yeah, out of all of that, every single character TJ has made has been from another piece of fiction. His first character was
Constantine from DC
from
Comics.
DC Comics, because he's a
John
big
Constantine.
DC Comics fan.
Oh, yeah.
Tiny torches.
Then his second one was Finral from Black Clover, because that's when Black Clover was popping and big, and both of you watched it a lot. And he really liked the character. And in the Greek campaign, he has played Darkness, La Latina Dustiness Ford from Konosuba.
She died.
She died.
Rip Darkness.
Any of you that know the source should not be surprised.
Very recently, actually, she
We
died.
miss her.
The most
It took-
surprising thing
it
is
took
those
her
10
to
levels.
level like 10
Yeah,
to
to
something
die.
like that.
So that's pretty surprising.
And that was just it was a plot reason too. Like she didn't die in battle.
Yeah, no, not entirely. She died because
Well,
she
she
wanted
did
to go to
die in
Hades.
battle, but like there was
Yeah.
a reason. Yeah.
And his new character is Kazuma from Konosuba. He's got a theme going. And then in the planned campaign, his character is
Odin Dark.
he's gonna hate
Odin
me if he
Dark.
watches this because I can't remember which. It's from one of the Fire Emblem games, and I can't remember which
Oh,
one
I didn't know that
is.
it was from something.
Yeah.
But okay, but this time though, this is like the most original one that's not a straight rip because it's a kobold.
Yeah.
it's the character, but it's also he's a kobold now instead of a person.
Yeah.
Because kobolds aren't people. We
You
hate
can't
them.
say that.
They're not real. They're not a real race. I can be. No, I shouldn't say that.
Don't be J.S. Willis, please.
But yeah, no. So this is the most original one that he's done so far, and also just because of how he wanted to do. He wanted it to be the one-to-one character. And then we had a DM player talk about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't really want to, like, isekai you, because in my homebrew setting, the concept of a multiverse does not exist. It's just one universe, one timeline. So I was like, I don't want to isekai you into this world from another one, because that breaks everything for me. That breaks my satisfaction.
What's that spell again that they came out with in Tasha's that's pretty much isekai?
Dream of the Blue Veil?
Yeah, that's right. They're pretty much the DM spell. Go to another existing realm. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like the one where you shift through the planes. It's not plane shift. It's not. It's literally. Oh, you're in Forgotten Realms. Go somewhere else now.
Go to Grand
Well,
Hall.
Welcome
Didn't
to
someone
Theros.
get that used on them at some point, or did we just talk about the
It got brought
possibility of
up.
that? Yeah,
Because when you guys did Tomb of Annihilation,
that's what it
in
was.
the library at the end, I said
Oh,
there was
yeah.
a book that had that spell in it, and of
Mm.
course, Taryn was like, "I want to copy it," and then I made it disappear because I didn't want him to copy it.
Well, because when you already invent time travel and break the game, you can't go too much further.
He was really going for Doctor Strange, huh?
He
wanted
was.
a multiverse.
He wanted
time.
all of it.
Doctor something. Yeah, Dream of the Blue Veil.
Dr.
You and up
Weird.
to 8 willing creatures within range fall unconscious. You travel to another world on the material plane, such as Arth, Toril, Kryn, or Eberron, which is, I believe, don't kill me if I'm wrong, I believe in order that's Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, and Eberron.
Mhm.
Eberron
That
as
sounds
Eberron.
right. Eberron as Eberron.
Eberron as themselves. If the spell reaches its full duration, the visions conclude with each of you encountering and pulling back a mysterious blue curtain. The spell then ends with you mentally and physically transported to the world that was in the visions. Like, this is just a straight... This is... The top comment on D&D Beyond for it is, this is stupid. I don't think I've ever thought a spell was stupid conceptually before.
Thanks, guy.
It's a DM spell. This is a DM spell. Only DMs have a real reason to use this unless a player wants to derail a campaign.
So Taryn.
So Taryn, yes.
Yeah.
I had something I was going to keep talking about after this, but I've forgotten it now. Because we got into Dream of the Blue Veil stuff.
Yeah, it would have to take like an exactly specified campaign to make use of that spell. Like,
Mhm.
you would have to have a campaign centered on the idea of traveling across different
I think
dimensions.
You could probably use it in Curse of
What's
Strahd.
the adventure
Yeah.
called? The adventure is called, like, Curse of the Machine or something? Infernal Machine Redux, I think?
Yeah, Infernal Machine something.
And that one is literally like you hop across the multiverse to get a bunch of different artifacts.
Ooh.
Let me see if I can find the name of it.
So the Artificer campaign.
Infernal Machine Rebuild.
Rebuild.
Travel through time and collect missing components of Lum the Mad's Infernal Machine. And yeah, you travel like all across the universe, I think. And so it could be useful there. But
Can
that's
we-
the only one, really.
Can we do that as a Vivia 2 one-shot, but it's Coalition instead of instead of whoever you just mentioned?
Lum.
Lum.
What a
the,
name.
The Lum.
The Iron Lum.
But I remember what I was gonna say now. They actually added like more of that. with Fizzbands. More of like here's multiverse stuff
Oh,
that can
shiny.
happen in Fizzbands. Not that the players can do, but just in the fact that because Fizzbands, if you don't know, changed a bunch of dragon lore in Dungeons and Dragons, the game that is half named after dragons. And they changed dragon lore to one. Now dragons no longer in 5e, according to Fizzbands, dragons no longer at birth have an alignment, which it used to be that all metallic dragons were good in some way, all chromatic dragons were evil in some way, and I'm not sure if all gem dragons had to be neutral, because gem dragons didn't really exist in 5e before Fizzbands came out. But with Fizzbands, they just scrapped that. They said, no, dragons don't have to have alignments anymore. They can be whatever you want. It's not a natural thing. So they did that. And also they brought, I don't know if they brought back or introduced for the first time this concept of, what's it called? It's like dragon vision or something, where when a dragon gets really old, they just develop, it's dragon sight, that's what it's called.
Oh yeah,
They
you were talking
develop
about
dragon
that the other
sight,
night.
and they just become aware of other versions of themselves
Mhm.
across the
Oh.
multiverse, and they can like contact them, and some of them straight up kill these other versions of themselves, like with mind power, and absorb them
It's just King the Conqueror.
It's
And
the Highlander rule. It can be
yeah,
only one.
and become more powerful because of it. So they added more things that were like, this reinforces the whole super multiverse concept in D&D, which I've never been a huge fan of, because it's just like,
I wonder why that is.
it's my world, and I want it, and I don't want other things to be interfering with it. But that's why you do homebrew.
That's why we play exclusively homebrew.
Speaking of dragons, are we going to talk about the big dragon in the room, the recent, at this point in time, recent D&D errata?
Oh my god.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I've scoured through a decent bit. I'm pretty sure out of the three of us here, I'm the one that has actually went in and read the errata.
I haven't read it. I just
The
read the
only
summary
thing I
you
know
sent.
is that they ruined the Eldritch Adept feat.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
did
makes me
they?
mad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now it pretty much only works for warlocks.
in order for
Then what's the point?
any of the the Eldritch invocations all have different
Mm.
prerequisites, except for a very limited few. But a lot of them, the prerequisite is you have to be 5th level. You have to be
Mm.
10th level. And it used to be, oh, I'm a sorcerer that's level 14. I'm going to take the Eldritch Adept feat and grab this 10th level prerequisite thing.
Yeah.
But they changed it to where now you have to be warlock level on that prerequisite.
That's so dumb.
So now pretty much the feat is either you can grab a really low level
which are usually
Eldritch
pretty bad.
Invocation, which usually aren't very good except at like really early levels. And that's usually why you swap them out
Mhm.
later. Or you can just get an extra invocation as a warlock instead of taking an ASI.
Now, of course, the interesting thing to note on this is that they also have the Metamagic Adept feat, which gives you a few more metamagic points and gives you
Mhm.
access to more metamagics.
And
And
that's,
gives you sorcery points if you're
yeah,
not a sorcerer.
it's
Yeah.
the same thing as being a sorcerer.
Mm.
But they didn't say that you had to have any sorcerer levels to do any of that.
That was actually going to be my question. I'm like, next season you're going to tell me Metamagic Adept needs sorcerer levels.
Nope.
Which
They-
it doesn't, which I think that's still good because
Yeah.
these were both really good, cool feats
Mm-hmm.
that I think when we talked about this, I was like, the whole purpose of those feats, in my mind at least, was to be like, oh, you don't want a multi-class, but you still want just a little, just a sprinkle, just a tiny
Yeah.
bit of other class flavor.
Mhm.
Take Metamagic Adept. Now you got a tiny bit of Sorcerer in there, but you didn't have to multi-class to do it.
Well, that's
Take-
Atlas was Metamagic Adept.
Yeah, take Eldritch Adept. You have a tiny little bit of Warlock in there, and you don't have to actually multi-class into Warlock. But now, Eldritch Adept is doo-doo fart. It's
Mm.
bad unless you are a Warlock, and at that point, you don't really need it. Because you're probably already going to take all the Eldritch Invocations you want. And there's a score of other feats that are better, just better to take in general than another Eldritch Invocation. Take Lucky. Take, if you're playing like a Hexblade and you're a melee Warlock, take Sentinel.
Now, this is
Um,
the takeaway that we took from it, but of course, the D&D community at large was much more perturbed by the changes to Volo's Guide to Monsters, I think is what it's called, where they removed the implication of any alignments for several monsters.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were perturbed by the lore implications of this, insinuating that all monsters should have alignments, like what are the wargs, as well as hags, but now they don't.
Hags, I agree with. Wargs, in my opinion, I think wargs are just like animals. But hags definitely, because the whole thing about hags is like, they're literally evil fae. They are evil fae.
Well, Wizards seems to disagree now. They think that anything that exists can always have any alignment. But the thing is before this came out, a lot of the D&D community was always like, man, alignment's dumb. It doesn't sum up what all creatures can be. And a lot of people were also like, man, why does a dragon have to be evil at birth?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be that way? And then they came out and they're like, hey guys, it doesn't have to be that way anymore. And they're like, why did you do this? You've ruined this for me. So, I mean, that's how the internet always is, right? If you change anything.
It's that thing with any fandom ever where it's like, everyone always complains about this thing. Then they change thing, and now all of the
and
people
then the other school,
all of the people that didn't complain about this thing come out of the woodwork and are like, no!
Yeah.
That's not allowed!
So I wonder how that's all going to shake out. I know that they said that it was supposed to be reflected in the digital copies. I haven't checked recently.
I haven't looked on D&D
I saw
Beyond.
people online were saying that it hasn't actually gone on to like D&D Beyond yet.
Oh, it hasn't?
That's what some people were saying, but I haven't checked in like a couple of days now. So it makes me wonder if the errata got rolled back, or
Let me take a look.
or what has gone on with all that. But that definitely sent some shockwaves through the community there for a minute.
I'll look
I
specifically.
can see that. Like, I understand them changing. I understand why they've changed it so races don't have specific alignments, because I always thought that was stupid.
True, like orcs and stuff.
Because that's just kind of iffy anyway, but also, like, automatically deciding a player character's alignment kind of limits your choices for what you play. Same thing with, like, having inherent debuffs and stuff kind of limits your character combinations. But for monsters, I feel like it's kind of whatever floats your goat, seriously.
Like back whenever orcs used to have the, what was it, -1 or -2 to intelligence?
Yeah.
Just by being orcs.
Yeah.
And then every source book that came out that had orcs in it changed it so that they didn't have that.
Orc of Eberron.
Eberron made their own version of orcs that got rid of that, and Matthew
Exegandria?
Mercer made his own version of orcs that didn't have that because it's a stupid rule.
That's certainly interesting how 5th edition has grown, because obviously 5th edition came out in 2017, I believe.
I don't remember.
16 or 17, I don't
Not
remember.
too long ago. And it dropped with like the orc. Well, first off, orc wasn't a playable race.
Yeah.
That was, I think, might have been in Volos. Half orc was the closest you could get on the PHB. And then they've been changing it more and more. I mean, there was the Orc of Exandria and the Orc of Eberron that got rid of that. And then there was with Tasha's, how they got the custom lineage kind of thing now, where you can change your score abilities. They don't have to be based on your race. Like before, Warforged was always a +2 to con, I think, and a +1 to something else. And now with Tasha's, of course, you can just switch those around. And it's like, it's strange how they're developing. They're obviously trying to make it so you don't have to follow the rules and there's not like racially implied bonuses.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, is this just the direction that they want to go moving forward? And, or is this the end? Are they going to do more to try and change this, or are they done, do you think, with these kinds of different changes?
I'm at the Hags.
You're at the
Hags still say they have alignments.
So D&D Beyond
right
hasn't
now.
changed. Okay.
And this is what the text says at the very beginning of opening Hags. Hags delight in bringing ruin and misery to the world. Malevolence is a core part of a hag that shapes its physical form and molds her magical powers. I get the idea that it's like, okay, maybe there's one diamond in the rough that's like, I'm not an evil hag somehow. I've overcome it. But at the same time, for me, I think the alignment thing for monsters is like, this represents the majority of them. The majority of them are evil in some way. And if you're going to have one in your campaign that's not evil, you're the DM. You don't have to read the thing and be like, guys, it says it's lawful evil, so it has to be lawful evil. That's the thing everyone needs to remember about D&D all the time is DM has final say on everything ever, even the rule books. The DM trumps the rule books every time. That's always been a long-standing D&D norm. So if you don't want it to be evil, it's not evil. It's as simple as that. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think all the people that are complaining have never DM'd before. Or if they haven't, they're all bad and should feel bad.
Well,
we might.
It makes me wonder, like, obviously they haven't changed it on the D&D Beyond one yet, but there's like a lot of DMs that are either new or just experienced ones that have never used those monsters before. You know, a lot of people like to play to the type that it has been written, because I mean, it depends on how far you want to go back, but who's to say, like if you go all the way back to ancient texts and stuff, who's to say, why is the dragon a bad guy, huh? Why has he got to be mean? Shrek changed that, you know. So a lot of people will say, like, if you're in a world where there's a bunch of fantasy things, and there's a bunch of dragons, there's a bunch of wargs, there's a bunch of hags, whatever, obviously the DM's going to want to be like, okay, what does D&D, what do Wizards of the Coast say hags should be played as? If I'm making a hag city, if I'm making a whole place that has a bunch of hags, what would their society be like? Volos helps with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, they can change it. I feel like almost everybody knows they can change it. But a lot of people want to know if they're playing in the setting, or if they just want advice on how to play a certain monster, if they don't want to homebrew all their monsters and they want to use official monsters, and they just want to know what is the way they should be played according to their alignment. Like if they're sentient races that speak. Like if you're playing against beasts and things that don't talk, it's very easy to be like, oh, they roar at you and then they attack you. Roll initiative. But if you're playing a hag, you're going to have to figure out, okay, what's their end goal? What do they want?
Spake, you ate the ice cake.
So I think that's what Volos really was trying to do. So them rolling back the alignment, I don't think it really even matters, because like there's people complaining about the alignment. Everyone knows that alignment's not final. If there's anyone out there that's still going like, sorry, the book says that they all are lawful evil, so this hag idea that I had, I can't do it. I know I'm the DM and I'm ruling this world, but I just will not. I will go to prison. I will be put to the guillotine if I make a chaotic neutral hag. No one, I don't think there's anyone out there thinking like that.
Did you know that Wizards has a dungeon for rule breakers? That's a thing. Everybody knows this.
I've been there.
Wizards, no! But I don't know. If there's anyone still playing like that, please DM me, because I would like to know your location.
He just wants to talk.
I just want to talk.
I just want to talk to him. No, I just want to shoot him.
No, Levi, no.
That hag, I should call her.
And on that note, we're going to cut for another break so that the microphone doesn't blow up.
That's why I just feel like they should let me have coitus with the hags. Are we recording yet?
Yes, we are.
So, yeah, this is going to be the end of our pilot episode. Our pilot for this Nat One podcast that we've been trying to get going for a while. So we just want to say, give us feedback. If anyone out there, if anyone at all watches this, listens to this, I love you to death. But yeah, we've been thinking about doing this for a while, and we just want to know what people think about our opinions, about what we've got to say. And if you don't like us, you're wrong and bad.
No.
Not really. That's a joke. It's a joke.
This probably ain't the only thing we're going to talk about either. We're just nerds.
We're
big
very
ball
nerds.
of nerds. Like,
we're nerds, and all of us really, really hope that we could just, not take part in society and become content creators and live in a content house together.
That is the
content
plan.
bubble.
Content bubble.
That
Where we
sounds
only
awesome,
play D&D.
and you guys should just give us all your money.
It'd be nice, I think.
But yeah, no, long story short, thanks for listening if you listened. And leave a like down below if you like the video. If you dislike, it doesn't matter anymore because YouTube got rid of that. So,
Did your Twitter added a dislike now? Oddly timed, huh?
I think that's